The galaxy considered humanity harmless. That was its first and final mistake. The Grand Assembly's main chamber hummed with the gentle murmur of a dozen interstellar diplomats. Today's agenda: the formal integration of the newest starfaring species. The representative from the Aquatic Velosian Consortium, Ambassador Thorne, called the session to order, his bioluminescent frills pulsing with serene authority. We now address the Terran petition for full membership. His translator emitted in soothing tones. A gentle wave of amused clicks and chitters rippled through the assembly. Counselor Vex, a being of crystalline structure, shimmered with mirth. The carbon-based bipeds from Sol 3, their application is charmingly earnest. They've only just mastered warp field theory. Another diplomat, her form avian and graceful, fluttered delicate wing hands. Their primary armaments still rely on chemical-propelled kinetic slugs. It is almost historical. The mood was one of benevolent, patronizing curiosity. They were discussing a quaint curiosity, a child taking its first steps. The chamber's ornate doors parted with a whisper. The human delegate entered. His nameplate read, Captain Elias Thorne, Terrestellar Navy, retired. His stride was measured, his posture relaxed, but his eyes held a quiet, knowing light. Apologies for my delay, Thorne said, his voice calm. Traffic from the outer orbital was heavier than anticipated. Ambassador Thorne's frills pulsed a welcoming blue. Captain Thorne, we were just admiring your civilization's enthusiastic progress. Your commitment to traditional ballistics is noted. A soft, polite chuckle echoed. Thorne smiled. It was a warm, genuine smile that somehow made several delegates subconsciously adjust their seating. Thank you. Though, I must admit, I'm surprised. In all your preliminary briefings, no one has asked about our most fascinating area of study, the legal limitations of armed conflict. The gentle hum in the chamber dampened. Ambassador Thorne's frills stilled. Limitations? You impose rules upon warfare. Well, you have to, Thorne replied, leaning casually against the central podium. Otherwise, things get creatively messy. We learn that the hard way. His smile turned thoughtful. Would you like a primer? It's a unique chapter in our social development. The Velosian ambassador exchanged a glance with the crystalline Counselor Vex. Perhaps a summary of your current defensive protocols would suffice? Nonsense, Thorne said, waving a hand. Context is everything. Let's start with something basic. Why we had to explicitly outlaw the military use of certain incendiary compounds. The story behind that particular treaty is a real crowd pleaser. He tapped the device on his wrist, and a complex, three-dimensional diagram flickered to life above the podium. The diagram depicted a molecular structure that seemed painfully aggressive. The assembly's earlier amusement had evaporated, replaced by a prickling silence. Counselor Vex crystalline form emitted a faint, nervous chime. You needed a galactic treaty for fire? Oh, that was just the start, Thorne said cheerfully. Then we had to deal with the whole issue of pressurized dispersal agents. And don't get me started on subsonic resonance weaponry. He paused, noticing the growing stillness. What? Did you think our primitive phase meant we weren't inventive? Ambassador Thorne sought to steer the conversation toward familiar, superior ground. Our conflicts, he stated proudly, are resolved with precision energy modulation. A target vessel is rendered inert, its crew temporarily neutralized. Clean, efficient, civilized. A hologram displayed a serene blue energy field enveloping a ship. Captain Thorne stared at it. Then he coughed, a sound suspiciously like a stifled laugh. I'm sorry. You designed your weapons to be less effective? On purpose. He shook his head, a grin spreading. That's admirably polite. Tell me, have your strategists ever considered the tactical elegance of a wide area fragmentation matrix? Or the psychological impact of delayed fuse airborne munitions? The avian diplomat's feathers ruffled. Such concepts seemed deliberately cruel. Seemed being the operative word. Thorne nodded. Which is precisely why we formed committees to define cruel. It was a fascinating process. For instance, We had lengthy debates on blade geometry for close quarters combat. Serrated edges? Too much. Smooth edges? Perfectly acceptable. The meeting minutes are riveting. A young aide scurried to Ambassador Thorne, whispering urgently. The ambassador's frills flushed a pale green. Our analysts, they have found references in your historical archives. The Hague and Geneva Accords. These were your regulatory frameworks. Thorne's expression brightened. You did your homework. Yes, those were the foundational ones. We basically had to write a manual titled Things We Should Probably Agree Not to Do to Each Other. And we've been updating it ever since. Our greatest achievement wasn't the weapon, but the rule book we built to contain it. Why? The question came from Counselor Vex, its voice chiming with genuine confusion. Why would such explicit prohibitions be necessary? Because every time we had a major disagreement, Thorne explained, his tone turning matter-of-fact, someone would inevitably invent a horrifying new method of applied physics, and the rest of us would have to convene and say, okay, that was impressive, but let's never do that again. It became a tradition. The avian diplomat looked faint. You hold post-conflict tribunals to outlaw the tactics you just used? Of course. How else do you maintain standards? Thorne said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the galaxy. Due process is important, even for atrocity, maybe especially for atrocity. He scrolled through his wrist device. Now, orbital kinetics. That's a fun gray area. Dropping a dense rod from a satellite doesn't technically count as an explosive, you see. So for the longest time it wasn't covered. Please. Ambassador Thorne interjected, his frills now a steady, anxious yellow. Perhaps we should focus on your peaceful technologies. Thorne blinked. Peaceful tech? That's where it gets really interesting. Give a human a harmless tool, and we'll find its lethal potential within a week. Human ingenuity is the process of finding new edges on a universe that forgot to be sharp. Weather satellites? Excellent for targeting data. Commercial adhesives? Revolutionary for battlefield trauma. Even our culinary developments. He leaned in conspiratorially. Did you know we once weaponized a dairy byproduct? It was an accident, but a very informative one. The chamber was now gripped by a profound, icy silence. The alien delegates weren't looking at a quaint primitive anymore. They were staring at a species that had treated the concept of violence as an academic discipline, complete with ethics boards and procedural loopholes. So, Thorne said, clapping his hands together, back to my original point. Our application for membership. We're a very rules-based civilization. We just had to write all the rules ourselves, usually right after we broke something no one thought could be broken. He gave him that warm, knowing smile again. Any questions? There were none, only the silent, dawning horror of understanding. 3 solar cycles later, the Assembly's classification database received a monumental update. The entry for Homo sapiens sapiens was drastically revised. Threat assessment, revised from minimal to existential paradox. Diplomatic protocol, immediate, unconditional grant of all requested privileges. Avoid contradicting them in committee. Special advisory, species exhibits a unique capacity for creative physics. Assume any demonstrated technology has at least one undisclosed militarized application. Do not inquire about the Spoon Protocol. In his new, spacious office with a view of the Galactic Core, Captain Elias Thorne placed a secure comm link to Terra. The package is delivered, Control. They've upgraded our status. No, I didn't need to mention the fractal shock warheads. The dairy product anecdote was sufficient. He listened, chuckling. Understood. I'll ensure the culinary innovations brief is first on next cycle's agenda. Thorne out. He ended the call and gazed at the stars, a faint, unreadable smile on his lips. The galaxy had hoped for a harmless new neighbor. Instead, it got a species that had spent millennia meticulously drawing a line in the sand, just to see how creatively they could cross it, and they had brought their own rule book. If you enjoyed this glimpse into humanity's uniquely organized chaos, show your support. Like this video and dive deeper into the unexpected with us, here on Winds of Thought.